Kate Falcha. Welcome to Irish Granny Helen. It's our Saturday book that we're continuing. This week, this is part 2 of Going Hollywood, Midwesterners in Movie Land by Sara Jordan-Heintz. And our last video was on the King of Hollywood, Clark Gable. And now we have Carole Lombard for chapter 2. They were married, interesting person. Let's get right to it. The title of chapter 2 is Carole Lombard, Unorthodox Angel, and she was also called the Queen of Comedy. It's funny, I'm just going to say this is not in the book, but just to preface this chapter, I have a really hard time sometimes distinguishing certain actresses from that time period, the 30s and 40s. There's a look, and they all seem to conform to that look. Some are more distinctive than others. Barbara Stanwyck. I can't think of another one. Carole Lombard, I really have to stretch sometimes to recognize her. I'm getting to be more familiar because I've done enough reading about the movies she's in that I kind of recognize the context. But there's a whole string of Hollywood blondes. And I think there's an interesting parallel today. There are a lot of people in the news who are very cookie cutter. Let's just put it that way. We maybe don't recognize it because we're in it. You get a little bit of perspective looking at old movies, how fashion trends are ubiquitous in their time. Everybody's carrying a Stanley Cup. Okay, chapter 2, Carole Lombard, Unorthodox Angel, the Queen of Comedy. She provided much needed escapism during the Depression with screwball comedies. And you see that a lot. That's a real trend in the Depression in the early 30s. A lot of gangster movies and screwball comedies. This is comedies that had a lot of slapstick in them and silly scripts, convoluted storylines. She had a common touch. She didn't seem quite as much the ice queen model, thou shalt not touch, look but don't touch. She seemed more human. She preferred the company of the crew than the stars. And the other blonde that was like that was Marilyn Monroe. She's remembered people's birthdays. She played a lot of practical jokes on people. She kept the mood elevated. She was a feminist. She went toe-to-toe with producers and directors. She had a lot in common with Marilyn Monroe. She would refuse roles unless her favorite crew were involved. So, she wanted the particular gaffer, makeup artist, etc., etc. They called her a tomboy because she didn't conform to gender roles. She was infamous for swearing, and she told dirty jokes. She was sometimes called the profane angel. In 1939, she married the King of Hollywood, Clark Gable, and they were the most talked about couple. They were the hot it couple. Let's see, what would their couple name be? That's a hard one. Gabart? No, that would be questionable for them in those days. That's really hard. Lombable? Maybe it's a good thing they didn't do that nonsense in those days. She was born October 6, 1908 in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Her real name is Jane Alice Peters. And her family was urban working class. There were a lot of immigrants where she grew up. She was athletic, but she also featured in school plays. She was naturally beautiful, and she had a stage mom extraordinaire. Her stage mother went with her to Hollywood in 1914 after she got divorced. They kind of moved to Hollywood. Their next door neighbors had friends who were in the movies. And one day, the next door neighbors had a guest come over who was a silent film director. And he saw Jane, Carol Lombard, and offered her a small role. She was 12 years old and she began taking acting and dancing lessons. Who else gets kind of a creep factor about this silent film director? I don't know. Maybe we're just being trained to be suspicious. I don't know. She went to the Coconut Grove to dance the Charleston, and I wrote in the margins, risque. Theories about how she got her first contract. There are several. One is that there was a talent show with a dinner party. She was seen there. The next was she was seen at the Coconut Grove doing the Charleston. And the third was that her mother contacted Luella Parsons, and she ended up with a screen test in 1924 with Fox. I vote number 3. She started making $75 a week, which, that was a lot of money then, believe it or not. And they changed her name to Carol Lombard. That March, so pretty quickly, and she got this contract in October of 24, so just a few months later in March, she got the lead in a movie, Marriage in Transit. But then she kind of fell backwards a bit and got lots of bit parts. Here's something let me rephrase that. Here's something I didn't know about Carol Lombard, which really tells me a lot about her. She was a Baha'i. And I am going to pursue looking into the Baha'i faith. I have a good friend who was a Baha'i. They're very good people, very ethical. This tells me a lot about her. She was into numerology. A lot of people here are into numerology. I'm having not enough space left anymore to learn anything new, I think. I don't know. Anyway. She was a second generation Baha'i, so she was raised this way. This is not something she embraced as an adult, on a whim or a spiritual journey. She was raised with these beliefs and that ethical system. They in general believe in peace. They're pacifists, and they don't believe in group worship. I think that's one of the more significant features of Baha'i. You're not going to necessarily find a Baha'i cathedral. They believe in individual prayer. They're really into that. She said she found religion in nature. Your temple is your everyday living. That's a quote from Carol Lombard. I mean, who'd have thunk, right? She was in a car crash, and she didn't believe in drugs, and she also was concerned about her career, and she underwent facial plastic surgery. I guess it's plastic surgery in the early days. It may not have been called that. She got 14 stitches in her face without anesthesia. Ugh. She became a Max Sennett bathing beauty. Now, we've talked a lot about Max Sennett in the context of Roscoe Arbuckle, the Keystone Cops. Max Sennett was a very eccentric person, and he had one of the earliest successful studios in Hollywood. Did a lot of filming on the streets of Hollywood, would pay homeowners for the right to use their front lawn and their living room, in their movies. And he brought forward a lot of famous stars. Chaplin started with him. Roscoe Arbuckle, Mabel Normand. He was a very interesting person, and everybody equates him with slapstick, which kind of resonates. This is Carol Lombard, Queen of Slapstick, but she was a bathing beauty, and this was shocking for its time. This was women in the late 20s allowing themselves to be evaluated and wander around in long lines of bathing beauties. They'd be in a bathing suit and be photographed, and that was shocking to a lot of people, this is not so long after bathing suits were dresses and you wore nightcaps and um, shin length dresses and tights and shoes to go into the water. And these were bathing suits that were like a one piece, a modified one piece that kind of went form fitting, but to roughly mid thigh. So a little bit above mid thigh. So for a lot of people, this was very shocking, very risque. From September 27 to March of 29, she was a Max Sennett bathing beauty, and she made 15 short films. The distributor of Sennett's movies, so like you'd have a studio owned by somebody, which would be the Keystone Studios owned by Max Sennett, but the movies had to be distributed to theaters. So always looking for a way to make money, there were these intermediaries that were called distributors, and they would take the movie from the studio and then sell it to the theaters. And Pathé was the distributor of Sennett movies. They liked her, and so they got her into some more pictures to get her known. And in 1928, she had her big break, Me, Gangster, that was made by Fox Studios. In 1929, she made the movie High Voltage, which was her first talkie. I've got to find that and watch that. She made several well-received films after that. And then she made 2 movies with William Powell, who was, quite the star at the time. She made Man of the World and Ladies' Man. And they fell in love. He was the top Paramount star at the time. He was the antithesis of her persona. Here's this sort of risque, madcap, practical joking, slapstickish comedian, and he was polished and urbane and intellectual. She was fun-loving and liked to play. She was kind of rough around the edges. They were the complete opposites of each other. They had a brief courtship, always a red flag, and were married in June of 1931. There was a 16-year age gap. It was his first marriage. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I misread my notes. His first marriage had ended. This is not his first marriage. His first marriage lasted 15 years, and he had a son. That's in 15 years is a long time in Hollywood. Carol was she sort of embraced the role of doting wife and stepmother. She really stepped right into that. And he doted on her. He lavished her with gifts, and it helped her career. You're married to the top star, a little of that fame kind of filters down. In 1932, she was in a movie with Clark Gable, No Man of Her Own, which was a great screen success. They had no romance at the time. Oh, I mentioned that when we read about Clark Gable. They were in this movie together, and it was just a passing thing, and they, didn't really have a relationship to speak of, and went about their own marriages at the time. She was a homebody. She loved animals, but they got divorced after 2 years because they had not enough in common. Who would have thought? I could never have predicted that. He was sort of upper crust and intellectual, and she swore and bummed around. She didn't fit in with his friends, his circle. People like Ronald Colman. Let me tell you a little gossip about, well, it's not that gossipy, about Ronald Colman. I grew up in Santa Barbara, and one of the I guess you could call it a suburb. It's part of the town, but it's in the fancy part of town called Montecito. And it's been there a long time. And I had friends. My family had friends who were from Ireland. There's a shock. And the father was the caretaker, gardener, guard, kind of this beautiful mansion and estate in Montecito. And there was nobody really there much. It had belonged, or did still belong, but there was nobody there, to the Joyce family of Joyce Shoes, which were a famous shoemaking family. And we would go and swim in the pool and hang out, and it was just a beautiful place. And at the time I was told this, and it meant nothing to me. I could just kick myself now. I'd love to go back and check the place out. It had been owned by Ronald Colman in, I guess, the 30s and 40s, maybe the 20s, 30s, 40s. But the thing I remember most significantly as a child was the koi pond. They had this beautiful pond with big gigantic goldfish, as a kid, the koi pond. And there was a devastating fire. And the fire didn't hit the main house. It got onto the grounds and it killed the koi in the koi pond. I was so traumatized. That's my story. Okay, back to our book. So she didn't fit in with friends like Ronald Colman, who was quite, and Richard Barthelmess, who was a very famous early silent film actor. I think he was in that movie about flying wings, one of the first big movies. He also made The Three Musketeers. So she bought a house, and Billy Haynes, somebody I need to make a video about, a very interesting man, was a former film star, and he turned decorator, and he helped her decorate, and he lost his career after allegations of homosexuality. Louis B. Mayer gave him an ultimatum: marry a woman or no more films. He became a decorator, and a good one, and beloved. I have to make a movie about him. He told Louis B. Mayer that he considered himself married to his partner, Jeremy, I think that's right, Shields, and quit acting. And this is my favorite part, they were together for over 50 years. Lombard's was his first house job. She kind of gave him a break and an entree into decorating, and he did decorating for the stars. The 20th Century movie with John Barrymore gave her an autographed picture to the finest actress I have worked with, bar none. Ironic, the use of the word bar from John Barrymore. Sorry. She seemed to have reached another level, in the echelon, a star blazing out of the scene. In the Coconut Grove, she spent a lot of time in the Coconut Grove. She met 25-year-old actor Russ Colombo. He sang and played the violin and composed music, and he was quite handsome. He was regarded as the next Bing Crosby. In 1934, he got on an NBC radio show on Sunday nights, the Romeo of Song. He got $50 a week. No, I'm sorry. The average income was $50 a week, and he was making $500,000 a year. Wow. Hedda Hopper implied that he was gay because she called him unmanly. People are obsessed with this. It's crazy. Lombard was devoted to him. And he died tragically September 2nd, 1934. And there's a lot of tragic death around her. It's interesting. The official version of events is that while sitting across from each other at a desk, Brown struck a match. Now, Brown was a photographer friend of Colombo. Brown struck a match against a Civil War era percussion cap and ball pistol, which was used as a paperweight. And according to Brown, this is his version of what happened. Now, Brown, photographer friend. I had a match in my hand, and when I clicked, evidently the match caught in between the hammer and the firing pin. There was an explosion, and Colombo slid to the side of his chair. When asked by the police to demonstrate, Brown held the pistol in his right hand, pulled back the hammer on the weapon, stuck the tip of a wooden match between the hammer and the firing pin, and lowered the hammer of the pistol to supposedly ignite the match. The flare of the match exploded a percussion cap and allegedly sent a bullet into Russ Colombo's face. And the question that the author writes is, who lights a match that way? Quote, I had the pistol in my hand, snapping the trigger with my thumb and not actually paying much attention to what I was doing. I don't know how or why I got the match under the hammer. All I know is that there was the explosion. That's all I remember. He was never charged, even with involuntary manslaughter. Brown claimed he had purchased several pistols from an antique store years before and had never bothered to check to see if they were loaded. The bullet struck Colombo in his left eye, lodging in his brain. Surgeons were unable to remove the bullet, and the handsome crooner was dead at the age of 26. Here's a picture of them together. Who gets Rust and Alex Baldwin vibes from this story? I bet it would have been treated differently if it happened today. Allegedly. So there was a rumor. Okay, this is a rumor that Brown, the photographer, and Colombo, the crooner, were having an affair. And when Colombo told Brown he was going to marry Lombard, it happened. Lombard was devastated. She took on the role of grieving widow, and she felt his death was predestined and, quote, said, glad his death came when he was so happy. His mother had a heart attack 2 days before he died, and she was never told about what happened. Like he got shot, she had a heart attack, he died. And they just never told her, no, that's not right. She had a heart attack, he died, and they didn't tell her because she had the heart attack. I'll get it right. Rosemary Clooney, does that name ring a bell? Aunt to George Clooney. She bought Brown's house and quotes it was haunted by Colombo. And we're going to have a little session with Deborah Lupien and look into this whole story. I think it deserves attention. Lombard continued her relationship with Robert Riskin and made a number of movies and starred in My Man Godfrey. My Man Godfrey is one of those movies that's iconic in Hollywood, and it really is a great movie. And she starred with her ex, William Powell, and they very, very, very funny together. It's about a madcap, kind of like a hypermanic, if you ask me, rich girl. And remember, height of the Depression, out on a scavenger hunt in the middle of the night. I guess that was a thing. And she needed to bring home a vagrant. She brings home William Powell and turns him into her butler. Ridiculous. The movie got 6 Oscar nominations. Both Powell and Lombard were nominated. But it also got her new agent, Myron Selznick. In 1937, she was making $500,000 a year, but there was an 80% tax. She got a letter from FDR saying thanks because she supported the tax. She said, people are starving. Take my excess money. $500,000 a year in 1937 was a lot of money. I had a friend who once told me in the early 60s that her parents had bought their house right after World War II. So 9 years after this, they bought a house for $9,000. It was a lovely house, $9,000. Just to give you a little perspective of how the value of money changes. In 36, she re-met Gable at a Valentine's party, and they had a big public fight. And the next morning, he awoke to 2 doves in his hotel room. She paid the clerks to put them in there while he was asleep as a peace offering. And then she delivered an old Model T painted white with hearts on it and said, "You're driving me crazy," and had it delivered to the MGM lot. He picked her up in the car for their date that night. They became a close couple. She was a free spirit liberal, a mother figure. He was a blue collar Republican and a big kid, basically. He always went for the women who gave off an older vibe. Even if they weren't older, they gave off an older vibe. They flaunted their romance even though he was still married. And I had a question here that I just put in here. I inserted this, and we're going to have to pursue this. Life magazine made a description. They did a big article on her, and there's a description of her in the article. And reading that, I thought, I don't know. Let me dust off my psychiatric license, man. She just sounded bipolar, manic. So I don't know if it was just her personality or if something was going on there. Allegedly, I don't know what I'm talking about. And she died a long time ago. So, flaunting their romance was very common. There was an article in Photoplay magazine in December of 1938 called Hollywood's Unmarried Husbands and Wives. You know, this is all the famous Hollywood stars who had affairs on their spouses. So, and it was not flattering. Quote, they build houses near each other, buy land in bunches, take up each other's hobbies, father or mother each other's children, even correct each other's clothes, each other's personalities. Feeling the heat from the press and Carol eager to become the next Mrs. Gable, the two got the green light to proceed with wedding plans after Gable's wife agreed to a divorce. They eloped. And they messed up their promised exclusive to Luella Parsons. The news got out. They promised her an exclusive and the news leaked, and she was not happy. They bought 20 acres, a ranch in the San Fernando Valley in Encino. And I have a really hard time wrapping my head around the fact that Encino was rural, but it really was the San Fernando Valley. It was an agricultural hub at that time. And it's interesting because there are videos on YouTube. You could seek them out. And they're, I don't know who puts them out. I can't remember. There was some sort of program of filming the streets of Los Angeles. And you can tell there's a camera mounted on the back of a truck. You can tell how people react, because people are really taken aback when they see this truck driving down the middle of the road. It goes down the street and then it comes back up, and it just does neighborhoods, and it photographs the houses and the stores, the traffic, and the people. The camera's not moving, but it's wide angle, and it takes in all this daily life just going on. Nobody knew they were coming. It's a remarkable glimpse. It's like the books, Spot and Jane, remember Jane and those beginning readers? It's like they come alive. It's really unusual. Okay. She really wanted children, but she had some sort of weird condition and was told she couldn't have kids. A lot of women got told that in those days. Who knows? She encouraged him to try for the role of Rhett Butler. Talked about that with Clark Gable yesterday. Despite everything, that was an inspired role for him. He embodied the book, the character in the book. Gary Cooper actually was the first choice. No, I don't see it. Gone with the Wind is going to be the biggest flop in Hollywood history. I'm glad it'll be Clark Gable who's falling flat on his nose and not me, said Gary Cooper. This movie sold more tickets than any other picture. It cost $4 million and it made $400 million. Lombard would have liked to have been Scarlett. It would have been awful. Vivian Leigh was born to play that role. She embodied that role. I mean, the casting for that movie was something else. I mean, if you read the book and closed your eyes and pictured the characters, everybody in the movie, it's really kind of incredible. But they really wanted to make another movie together. They had made that movie previously, but they never did. They never had the opportunity. She made a couple of serious films that were not as popular as her comedies. She made Hitchcock's Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and they remade that with that skeletal woman. What's her name? John Voight's daughter. I can't remember her name. In 1941, she made To Be or Not to Be. Highly recommend. It's a satire on the Nazis in Poland. Springtime for Hitler in Germany. It was Mel Brooks' version. She volunteered to take Gable's place on his Bond tour, which we talked about in the Clark Gable video. He was afraid of crowds. Isn't that interesting? And he felt like he wasn't a salesman, that this was not, he could do it in front of a camera, he could do it on stage, but he couldn't do it in front of a live crowd and be persuasive. And she had no problem. So she took her mother and her press agent by the last name of Winkler. And I looked it up because I thought, is this Henry Winkler's relative? No, not related. Right before she left, they had a confrontation. They had a little spat. He was having an affair with Lana Turner. And when we did Clark Gable, there was discussion about how jealous Carol Lombard was of Lana Turner. He denied this, but the rumors persisted. This will be another thing to ask when I do this with Deborah. Deborah doesn't know this yet. Maybe she's watching. Hi, Deborah. So she was really in a hurry to go home, partly because she was concerned about Lana Turner. And she talked her mother and her publicist, her press agent, into flying. They did not want to fly. Otto, the press agent, dreamed of dying in a plane crash right beforehand. And her mother said that they were all into numerology. Remember, they were Baha'i. Her mother said the flight was number 3 and it was an unlucky number. So she put pressure on everybody. And then they finally tossed a coin to decide. And they lost. At a New Mexico stop, they got bumped from the flight. And she threw a big Hollywood fit. And 4 passengers volunteered to give up their seats to her mother, the agent, and somebody else. 12 minutes out of Las Vegas, where they stopped for refueling, they hit a mountain. Lombard was always haunted by the number 3. She was a 3rd child. She was Gable's 3rd wife. They were married 3 years. She died at the age of 33 on flight number 3, and her mother warned her that 3 was an unlucky number for her. Gable was devastated. Her dog was too. This is so sad. Her dog was too. He kept following Gable around looking for her. Gable went into isolation. He watched her movies. He avoided friends. He became a changed man. And then what did he do? What you would always do. He joined the Air Force, the Army Air Force, and flew a whole lot, 20-something combat missions over Germany as a photographer and a gunner. FDR actually awarded Lombard posthumously the Presidential Medal of Freedom as the first woman killed in the war because she was on a mission to get money for the war bonds. But it was pilot error. It wasn't anything nefarious. There was a line cut out of the movie To Be or Not to Be that had not yet been released when she died. Before it was released, they cut the line out of the movie To Be or Not to Be. The line was, quote, "What can happen in a plane," unquote. She was made the honorary member of Century City, and they declared it a studio holiday. Century City's part of LA. And they sent everybody at the studio home, which pissed off Selznick. Priorities. She was thoughtful, considerate, always joyous, bouncing, full of pranks and risque stories, and she was frank to the point of treason in a land where frankness is not valued too high. Carol always planned on retiring from films in favor of becoming a housewife and a mother. Quote, "I want to live a natural life before I'm an old lady. I want to get off the pogo stick. Do you think I'd stick around this racket until they start feeling sorry for me. Not this dame. You've seen these poor devils hanging around trying to get parts, trying to remain part of this tinseled life, trying to be somebody. You won't see me there. I'm quitting at the top. This comes to mind Gloria Swanson's role in Hollywood Boulevard, Sunset Boulevard. Lombard told the press that she hoped the company making her last film would advertise it as Lombard's farewell appearance. It'll be the world's first real farewell appearance. When they put that on the billboards, it'll be true. When I'm set, they can say goodbye to Lombard. Boy, won't that be something. So that's the story, a very sad story of Carole Lombard. Now, I am really pressed for time. This is not a terribly long video, but I have a hard stop. So let me quickly see, can I get through the next one fast enough? And no, I don't think I can. So I apologize. This is a bit shorter than I usually do, but I have no choice. I have to be gone. I hope you enjoyed this. What I would recommend, since I'm stopping early, is go on Turner Classic Movies and find some Carole Lombard movies. If you don't watch anything at all, watch To Be or Not to Be, because it is very good and it's timely. And then watch Mel Brooks' version. That's your assignment. And I'll be back with more. Let me know what you think of this book. I know it's a departure. I'm usually into something serious, and I'm actually taking notes right now on something very serious. So I felt we needed to elevate our spirit so we could bring her right down. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good weekend. Watch some old movies. Go take a trip down memory lane. Watch My Man Godfrey. It's very good. It's really fun. And you kind of get a glimpse of the Depression. And it's a real, let me just say this, it'll be a gentle entree into our next book. It's a little hint. Slán go fóill, slánte.